everyone, I'm Jessica Stutzman and welcome back to the Millcreek Government Channel. Viewers, are you ready to have a fun and safe summer this year? We want to help you accomplish this goal by providing summertime cooking safety tips so your picnics don't get spoiled by improperly handled food. Joining me today to discuss the do's and don'ts of proper food preparation and storage is Lisa Suzanne, Environmental Protection Specialist for the Erie County Department of Health. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, again, just talking about summertime cooking and safety, I'm planning, a lot of picnics, barbecues, we might have some graduation parties going on, and the last thing we want to get is some type of foodborne illness, and then disaster sets in and nobody's happy once you get food poisoning. So
Absolutely.
Are foodborne illnesses more prevalent during the summer months?
Yes, they absolutely are, Jessica. And the reason for that is because there's a lot more picnics, there's a lot more outdoor activities. And with the outdoor activities, you have less means of controlling the environment that you're in, such as you're grilling on an open flame or on an outside grill instead of in your oven or on a stovetop. You also have less control for keeping the cold food cold, such as refrigeration. So yes, there are more chances of getting a foodborne illness.
And so there's different kinds of foodborne illnesses. What types of illnesses do you typically see from improperly handled food?
There is a huge range. A lot of times norovirus is very prevalent. It's also known as a two-bucket disease. A lot of people get them when they go on cruise ships and travel. And it is very easy to spread from one person to another. So that is one of the highest foodborne illnesses that we do see out there. So it's something to watch out for.
And I would imagine, just recently being on a cruise, they did funnel everybody into the hand washing stations, which was helpful. But I would think on cruise ships, everybody's in such tight quarters.
Yes.
That's probably why it spreads so easily, particularly in that instance.
Correct, yes. So a lot of times that's when family members get together, or you have birthday parties or those types of things, and you get a bunch of friends and family together, and people are shaking hands, hugging each other, and like I said, it's very easy to spread from one person to the next. And really, the only way to really stop norovirus is hand washing and just sanitizing and making sure that you're not cross-contaminating anything, and just washing your hands as frequently as you can.
And the foodborne illnesses, they can be bacterial or viral.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Bacterial are going to be the ones that are going to spread toxins that are going to be involved. So a lot of people think to themselves, well, if I just cook this food, even though I left it out all night, I'll cook that bacteria out. Well, you can cook the bacteria out, but the toxins are released when the bacteria dies. And so those toxins are basically in a shell that will prevent them from being killed even at high cooking temperatures. So the toxins are what actually get you sick and not the bacteria itself.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yes. So like I said, it's very difficult to cook them to a high enough temperature that will kill the toxins. So even though you're cooking, whatever the food might be, your chicken or whatever, you will kill the bacteria, but not the toxins. So it's still very, everyone should be aware that it is very dangerous to leave food out and just think that by reheating it that you're going to kill anything that would be growing into it.
Right. And then again, just as I was doing some background research, I found out also that parasites, you said toxins, allergens, and some other substances can also make you sick when it comes to eating some food that's not been handled well.
Absolutely. Oftentimes people will mistake maybe an allergen or just an ingredient that doesn't sit well with them. Maybe you ate at a place that uses peanut oil in their deep fryer instead of, a canola oil or something. So your body might react differently, and you might say, oh, I got sick at that facility, but it might not even be that. It might just be that the oil that they used didn't sit well with you. And so that's causing your body to, react poorly to it. So.
Right, right. And again, you mentioned the norovirus. What are some of the other illnesses?
E. coli is one that we see with like a lot of times ground beef, anything that can be found in the gut of any warm-blooded animal, really. Salmonella, listeria, any of those. Even staph is something. Staphylococcus aureus is something that we do see, and that is actually from your sweat. As gross as it sounds, but when it comes to summertime, that is one of those things to be aware of. Is just watching that you're not brushing your hair or wiping your face off when you're all sweaty, and then going back to the grill and grabbing the hot dog buns and putting your hot dogs on without washing your hands prior to doing that.
Yes, yes. I do. Since I had my little girl, not that I wasn't always, but I'm just so much more diligent, again, handling her food, because I always think I'm an adult, I can handle more than she can. She's, an infant, or a toddler now. But I thought this was a really interesting statistic. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Most of them will recover without any long-lasting effects. However, there can be some devastating and even deadly side effects. What are some of the signs and symptoms of food poisoning?
Okay, so and that statistic is accurate, and a lot of people don't realize that. But and even a population like a diabetic is at risk of falling ill and even being hospitalized. And some of the symptoms they vary, and that's what makes really diagnosing a foodborne illness so difficult, because. Like with listeria, you can show symptoms 90 days after eating a product.
Really?
So if you went and had a deli sandwich somewhere and fell sick 90 days later, it's going to be very difficult to pinpoint that it was from, luncheon meat or wherever you got it from. Right. So it can be it's very difficult. To be honest with you, the more people that fall ill, the easier it is to pinpoint what actually caused the illness. Not that we want to see a bunch of people getting sick, but it does help us narrow down where they ate, what similar foods that they had, what common facility they were at, or party even for that matter. And we do see that a lot of times with even closed groups, where a lot of people feel sick, and maybe one person came to the party and wasn't feeling well and spread it to everybody else.
Okay.
And we do see that a lot.
Right, and so some of the common symptoms, we think of upset stomach, abdominal cramps, nausea, fever, dehydration. Are there any rare, uncommon signs or symptoms that you see as well?
There are, and a lot of that too also comes from chemical poisoning, or even like puffer fish, which you don't really see in this area very often, which can cause like hallucinations and numbing and stroke-like symptoms. So again, it's very hard to pinpoint that, and a lot of times, when you go to the doctor, they're not going to think foodborne illness first and foremost.
Right.
They're going to, if you're showing signs of a stroke, obviously they want to address that first. So it is very difficult. It is kind of playing that basically kind of narrowing it down, is what you're doing when it comes to foodborne illnesses. So.
Okay, and you said folks with diabetes might be at higher risk. What are some other groups of people that have to be, again, more careful? I mentioned my daughter who is very young, but what are some other groups of people that have to be very careful with food preparation, and maybe even, with some of the actual items, either at the grocery store or at the restaurant? Who are those groups of people?
So, elderly population are a lot more susceptible to foodborne illness. Young children, school-age children, pregnant ladies, and not necessarily the woman themselves, but the unborn fetus. I had mentioned listeria earlier, and listeria can actually cause stillborn illnesses in pregnant ladies. So you do have to be careful with that. People with autoimmune diseases, like I said, diabetes, HIV, people that have really anything that affects the autoimmune system can be extremely sensitive to that. People that have had transplants are also another susceptible group. Your people that are going through chemotherapy and cancer. So there's a lot of people out there that really fall into that category of just that need to be cautious of what they're putting in their mouths and how they're preparing things.
And remind me, with listeria, when it comes to a pregnant woman, what foods should women avoid who are pregnant to not get listeria?
So hot dogs are one thing, deli meats are another. People that really enjoy their deli meats that still are going to eat them when they're pregnant, my advice to them would be to just make sure and cook it then. So melons, they've been finding now having a lot of listeria on them. So yeah, it's becoming more prevalent for whatever I think just from the fast-paced life that we all live and
Okay, and so again, there are so many scenarios in which we prepare food, store food, cook food. And again, just mentioning how it's more prevalent in the summer, road trips or boating or going to the beach or graduation parties. How should we store our food in a cooler for that picnic or for that party?
Okay, good question. So anytime that you are going to any sort of parties or anything or traveling, we would always recommend, if you can, take one cooler for just beverages and one cooler for just food. The beverage cooler is typically opened and closed much more frequently, so you don't have to worry about contaminants and temperature fluctuations and that sort of thing. And also, when you do take a food cooler, we also recommend that you be aware of how you're storing your product in there. So your higher risk items, such as chicken, items that need a higher cooking temperature should be stored at the bottom of the cooler, if at all possible. And then things that are your ready to eat foods or things that don't need as much cooking, your salads or even your hot dogs should be stored more towards the top of the cooler. And anyone that would like any advice on or knowledge on how to cook food to the proper temperature and how to store things correctly can go on our website, and we do offer some food safety guidance and temperatures too.
And I did go to your website. It is very, very helpful. And I would say I was good about most things. And in a little bit, I would like to cover some myth busters, which some were very, very interesting to me. I might be doing wrong myself. When we do have food out at a picnic, how long, with it sitting out, and of course on the countertop or on the table, how long can it stay out before it becomes unsafe?
Right. So it's a little bit different for picnics than it is for restaurants. So I don't want to confuse anyone out there that might be own a restaurant and say what. But we do recommend, if the temperatures are over 90 degrees, that food not be left out more than 1 to 2 hours, and then refrigerated. If it is above 90 degrees, even then, they do make products out there that can help keep your product cold. Like they have these they almost look like a swimming pool, and then you put ice in them, and then you put your cold items in there, and it'll keep it cold, hopefully throughout the duration of the event or the party. So we do recommend that whenever possible, to try and keep it cold for as long as possible.
Right. I have seen that. Those are really neat. Actually, they're very, very big, and you can just place like the whole bowl of salad or the whole bowl inside, and it does keep it chilled for an extended period of time. Are there specific foods that we should be aware of that should not be left out for a long period of time, no matter what?
Yes, and everyone knows like your chicken and your protein items need to be refrigerated. A lot of people aren't aware that items such as cut watermelon, cut honeydew, and cut cantaloupe all actually can harbor bacteria. So leaving them out during a summertime party can be just as dangerous as leaving out chicken. But a lot of people aren't aware of that. So that is one of those items that you want to make sure to keep 41 degrees or colder. What we do try to tell the public is keep your cold foods cold and your hot foods hot. And what that means is cold being 40 degrees or below and hot 140 or above. Okay. So those are kind of the easy numbers for the public to remember. Some other items that people maybe aren't aware of are the pasta salads and the chicken salads and all that. And everyone thinks, oh yeah, because it has mayonnaise in it. But it's actually not the mayonnaise that causes people to get sick. It's the cooked pasta that is the high risk item there.
Really?
Yes. If you look on the bottom of the back of a mayonnaise bottle, you'll see one of the first ingredients now is vinegar. So back many, many years ago, when people used to make their own mayonnaise, they were using raw eggs in there. And so therefore it was a little bit higher risk. So for those people that are still making their own mayonnaise, yes, definitely keep that refrigerated. But if you're going out to the store and buying Hellmann's or whatever generic brand, it's not the mayonnaise that's going to be a problem. Now your quality might go downhill because the mayonnaise might start to separate, but as far as safety goes, you're going to be safe with the mayonnaise. It's actually the pasta that you've got to watch out for.
Now, why is that?
It's just a way that the pasta doesn't have enough safety precautions. Fat Tom is what it comes down to. It's an acronym saying that there's enough moisture in pasta that will actually allow for the harborage of bacteria to grow.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yes.
That's so interesting.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not the mayonnaise, it's the pasta.
It's actually pasta itself.
Okay.
Yeah. High starch items. Same
Okay.
with potatoes too.
Right.
So a potato salad, it's the same concept.
Really?
So items that have high starch in them. Rice also.
Yes.
Is another item that you want to keep cold or
Okay.
hot.
Okay, so interesting. I'm so glad you gave us that tip.
yeah.
I might be doing that one wrong.
Oh, okay.
And do you have any advice for marinating food to be grilled?
Yes, absolutely. So we are getting into the marinating season. So one thing I always like to stress to people is when you do marinate, please make sure you marinate in your refrigerator, not on the countertop, regardless of what the recipe says. I know a lot of them say that they want it to be at room temperature, but if you do that, just keep it out for a few minutes, not for any, nothing, of any length. So the other thing too that I really want to stress about marinades is a lot of times people like to marinate their, pork or whatever they're marinating in the marinade and then take it out, grill it or cook it, and then take the leftover marinade in that same container and pour it over top. That's called cross-contaminating. You don't want to do that. All you're doing is spreading any of the uncooked juices and germs that were in there on top of the cooked product. So if you want to have extra marinade to put on top of your product, just make sure and set that aside prior to putting your meat into the marinade.
Right, that makes perfect sense.
Yes.
And I don't want to get too far in the show without talking about some of the props we have here on the table. What do we have? What have we got here?
Okay, so I brought two types of thermometers in. One is a meat thermometer, and the other one is a digital thermometer. So anyone that has a meat thermometer, my recommendation is to probably put it aside and just use it as a conversation piece. These things they can't be calibrated and they're very difficult to read. The other thing too is that there is a dimple that a lot of people don't realize that is located right by my finger. And a lot of people make the mistake thinking this is tip sensitive. So if you have a thin product, you're never even getting it down to where the dimple's at, so you're never getting an accurate temperature with this. So these are often used improperly. So we don't recommend these. So that's really all I wanted to say about the meat thermometers. The digital thermometer, these are great. They are actually quick and easy to use. They are tip sensitive, so even if you have a thin product, you're still going to get an accurate temperature with just a tip. It shows up right on the screen what your temperature is, so it's very clear and easy. There's no guessing or saying, does that look like a 72 or a 71 or any of that. You see it right away what it is. So and they're relatively cheap. I mean, $20 you can get a decent thermometer. And I do recommend digital. It's just because they're hassle-free. The biggest problem with them is typically that the battery dies and you have to replace the battery. But usually when they're they're not working correctly, you'll know it because you'll stick it into something that'll be steaming and it'll just kind of go a little haywire. So it kind of tells you that it's not working correctly when it's not. So they are nice.
And $20 is totally worth me not getting sick.
Absolutely,
so
yes.
I will take that. I will take that small fee.
Yes, and it helps with not overcooking your chicken too, because a lot of times people will cook it until it's dried out. Well, you don't have to do that. If you use your thermometer,
Right.
you can cook it right up to 165 and then say, okay, I know that it's done.
Now, and that's what I was going to ask. Now, your main proteins, I can think of beef, chicken, pork. Do they have to be cooked all to one certain temperature to make sure they're done, or are there different temperatures?
There are different temperatures, and that's why I was saying if you want to look at that up on our website, you're more than welcome to, for anyone out there that's watching today. And it'll kind of break it down for you as to what temperatures. I always tell people, if you can't remember numbers very well, just remember 165 then. It doesn't matter if it's ground beef or chicken or what it is, your top cooking temperature is 165. So as long as, no matter what you're cooking, protein item, to 165, you're gonna have a safe product.
We're going to be safe. Okay, good, good. And transporting picnic items safely, anything else we should have besides a cooler and some ice blocks?
A lot of times we'll recommend bringing either like a blanket or some sort of umbrella or something, just so that way you have a shady area to keep your cooler in. The other thing too we often recommend is that when you are transporting, that you keep the cooler inside of the actual truck or your car, where you're sitting at, because your trunk is often a very warm spot, so you're not getting the air conditioning that you're getting up front and inside the car. So if you can transport it that way, that's how we recommend transporting your food.
Perfect, thank
Yes,
you.
you're welcome.
And so, again, we all hope that a picnic disaster does not occur, but if you think that you've consumed food that's been contaminated, what should our viewers do?
They should absolutely go and visit your physician first. We also do have a foodborne illness line, so if you do suspect that you are sick or have become sick, or a family loved one sick, we do recommend that you call us, and we'll do a 3-day history of what you ate, where you were at, and pretty much take it from there. So.
Okay, good, good. And what's the contact information for your department?
Oh, if you call 451-6700, you can get a hold of pretty much anyone from any of the department by talking to the secretary, and they'll direct you from that point.
Okay, good. And so what I also want to do, I found some food safety myths.
Yes.
And so I might be guilty of a few of these. So if you could help me out with a couple of these.
Okay.
I know that the show is coming to a close soon. True or false? Food poisoning isn't that big of a deal. I have to tough it out for a day or two, and then it's over.
Oh, yeah, that's very false.
I might be guilty. Okay,
Right.
that's bad.
And a lot of times people do think that, like, oh, I'll be fine. But again, the populations that we talked about earlier, the high-risk population, should definitely seek some guidance and some medical care if they suspect that they have a foodborne illness. It also can attack other organs and make you even worse than where you're at right now. You might think, oh, I'll get better, but actually it could go the opposite direction, and you could potentially get worse.
Okay. Okay. So don't wait it out. Don't
wait it out. No, don't tough it out.
I've learned. Okay, it's okay to thaw meat on the counter. Since it starts out frozen, bacteria isn't a problem.
No, that's another myth. I know a lot of people that still do that, and it's a hard one to break, but the reason being is that it's not safe is because if you have a chunk of beef out, the outside starts to thaw out. However, and the inside is still frozen, but the outside starts to thaw out. And at that point in time, you're talking about a product that is on the outside experiencing whatever the room temperature is. Mm-hmm. So if your house is 72 degrees, so is the outside of that meat. And at that point in time, bacteria is able to grow.
And so what's the best way to thaw a frozen item?
There's a couple ways. The best way, my recommendation would always be to put it in your refrigerator. So planning ahead is often the key to that one. If you're in a pinch and you maybe didn't plan ahead or something happened, you can run it under cool running water is another method to thaw. And you can also thaw by just taking the product straight out if you wanted to make frozen burgers and just putting those frozen burgers right onto your grill and cooking it, using that as part of the thawing process by cooking it. We also, probably not ideal, but another method is also putting it in your microwave and cooking it that way. The only thing I would say about that though, if you're gonna use your microwave, make sure that you are continuing the cooking process at that point in time. So if you're gonna microwave it, make sure you're cooking it from that point on.
Well, I want to thank you. I appreciate it. Again, I do want to be as health conscious about this as I possibly can be for myself and for my very young daughter. And so I appreciate it. You've debunked a couple of myths here for me. What I want to ask just very quickly, because we're at the end of our time, what's the biggest takeaway message? What is just a few simple things we can do to prevent foodborne illness?
Definitely, we're always going to recommend hand washing. Is a huge. People don't realize how much you can prevent people from getting sick just by properly washing your hands. So that will always be my biggest one, as well as keeping your cold foods, again, like I said earlier in the show, 40 degrees or below, and or hot foods at 140 degrees or above. So don't just ever turn off that grill and let that food sit there for a few hours, or just leave your products sitting out and thawing at room temperature. Those are very important aspects of keeping your family and yourself safe.
Lisa, thank you so much for joining us here today. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Viewers, we got a lot of good tips today about keeping you safe and healthy and happy and having fun this summer at your picnic. I really want you to take all of these to heart because we don't want you to, again, have your picnic or your party ruined because some of these practices weren't followed. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact the Erie County Department of Health. Lisa is more than happy to answer those questions for you. Again, thank you for tuning into the Millcreek Government Channel, and until next time, have a great day.